In my opinion, gold must have a major role.
They now have to keep printing or we crash.
We've got this ticking time bomb.
Talking gold with the one and only Andrew Maguire.
Welcome to Live from the Vault.
Hi there, my name is Shane Moran, and I'll be your host for this week's episode of Live from the Vault. And welcome to the show that goes beyond the headlines and uncovers the truth about the precious metals industry and the effects on the global economy in these historic times we're living right now. With exclusive access to experts and insiders, we reveal information and insights that you simply won't find anywhere else. Now, this week, we have the one and only Andrew Maguire, precious metals expert and whistleblower in the vault. And to help him pull back the curtain, we'll be joined by popular demand and a good friend of Live from the Vault, industry expert, Dr. Stephen Leeb. That's right, Dr. Stephen Leeb is in the vault, and you're not going to want to miss a moment of this conversation. So just before we introduce our special guest here, and before we head over to the UK, please help keep spreading the word. And, you know, if you like the channel, hit the like button right now. It really helps the show out, and share this information. And also, if you haven't already done so, subscribe. And if you click on that bell right there, you'll be notified in real time as each episode goes live. Now, let me introduce, for those that don't know, Stephen, he's a money manager and investment advisor. He's been doing this for over 45 years, a wealth of knowledge, and he's been guiding investors via his newsletter, Intel for Investors, and his books and his blogs and his appearances on financial news networks, including CNN, Fox News, NPR, Bloomberg TV, and also Live from the Vault, just to name a few. So let's head over to the UK and talking gold with the one and only Andrew Maguire and our special guest, Dr. Stephen Leeb. Over to you, Andy.
Well, do you know what? Thank you, Shane. But, you know, to me, this is a real treat. And I couldn't think of better timing to have Dr. Stephen Leeb. I know you don't want me to call you doctor. I know that.
No, I don't.
Last time.
just my wife.
Well, it's the perfect time to have you on us. Look, there's so much going on in the world. But before we look at perhaps the geopolitics that are going on and this very strange situation that's evolving, I was going to ask you, what really had my attention, Stephen, is your work in coining the acronym ICAG. But you know, when I heard you talk about this, it just connected all the dots. So if we could start there, that would be, if you could share what that is. And I know so many people will, it'll just be like the light bulbs going on.
Inflation, commodities, and gold. Yes, I could talk about that all day long. I think, Andy, what I have found in doing research on BRICS and what they're trying to do and where this world is headed, gold, in my opinion, gold must have a major role. It is what people don't realize, and what the West now thinks of when they think of gold, they think of money. Gold is, yes, it's valuable. And I remember you pointing out the last time we talked, if you're lost in the desert somewhere and there are two people that there's one drink of water at a reservoir and one guy has a gold coin and you've got a few dollar bills, guess what? The guy with dollar bills is just out of luck. Gold will be it will be regarded as money everywhere, but gold has something very, extraordinarily special about it, and I'm not exaggerating. It is regarded in almost every religion in the world, from Hindu to Buddhism, to Christianity, to Islam, to you'd be hard pressed. I mean, there are religions with obscure names that are, religions for 1 million people. It doesn't matter. Gold is regarded as something that's sacred. I mean, as one example for, that I can give you is the Chinese. Now, if you Google Chinese, China's not very popular in the West, and this shows whatever you do. So if you Google Chinese, what's gold mean for China? And the one word answer you'll get usually is money. But then if you do a little bit more research, you'll find that gold really doesn't mean money for China. Gold is sacred for China. And New Year's colors, if you go to China when they're celebrating New Year's, you'll see red with gold streaks in it. What represents the material world is the red. What represents the spiritual world is gold. And it's that way virtually throughout the religions of the world. Certainly every major religion, and I haven't found one real exception to it. And that's what makes gold really sacred, really special as a monetary metal, because obviously it has material value. As you said, your glass of water, if you're dying of thirst, you want to pay and want to have gold as coin. Everybody in the world for the last 5,000 years would have accepted it. And there's a reason when things last that long. It means that there's something very special about them. And gold indeed is extraordinarily special because it's the only metal, the only metal that embodies both a material value, a clear material value, as well as a sacred value. And if you're going to have a monetary system, I don't care whether it's for a single country like the United States or Britain, or whether it's a worldwide monetary system, if gold doesn't sit somewhere at the center of it, you've got major trouble because you are encouraging just the accumulation of money. There is nothing special or sacred or related to a higher power. There has to be something individual that you can feel about what you're getting. When you look at a dollar bill, well, the faith in of the United States government. Well, I don't have a lot of faith in the United States government. Not right now. I'll be very honest with you. I did 50 years ago. But with the kinds of debt, et cetera, what kind of promise are they making? I mean, they can't afford to pay it. Everybody, it's taken accounting 1A knows that. But if it's backed by gold, different deal, because that's sacred. And that's something people can accept. And it's remarkable. I mean, originally, this is something, I may have gotten it talking to you on one of these interviews. I'm not sure. I think I owe you on this. If I ever complete this next book, I'll certainly thank you for it. But I originally thought, I saw 1970, 71, the early 70s as a turning point. And I saw it as because gold left the system. And when gold left the U.S., we went wild. We spent money like drunken sailors. All of a sudden we have layers and layers upon our health coverage, insurance, this and that you have to pay for. And what ends up is that the bureaucracies make a ton of money. We have a president of an insurance company, a health insurance company that'll make $10 million, $20 million a year. And well, it's really gotten bad over the last, 5 years. Life expectancy is going down in the United States. It's remarkable. I hate to say, it really brings tears to my eyes. I remember, the 60s were a turbulent time, and that was kind of the transition time. The assassination of the two Kennedys, that was what really did us in. And I'll tell you what, I don't want to go on. See, I tell you, I can't stop once I start talking, but John Kennedy, when he was assassinated, I think it was in November, that December, people came home from Vietnam. He had set that up, that people started coming home. This country didn't want that. He had to fight like a dog to keep people like Curtis LeMay and others that were part of the Joint Chiefs of Staff from bombing Cuba, they were willing to risk a first strike, a first nuclear strike. Kennedy, which wasn't known widely at that time, had private letters with Khrushchev. And Khrushchev was no great, he was, if you think Putin is bad, Khrushchev had nothing on Stalin, basically. I mean, but still, he wanted peace, and they both recognized it. And it was through this communication that they, were able to establish a way of dealing with the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. When Kennedy was shot, Khrushchev was really beside himself. That's the story. I mean, he was very, very upset. And things got worse in this country through the 60s. I was in graduate school then. And they were really horrible because of Vietnam. I mean, it was a really divisive, horrible war. And it really gave the military-industrial complex a horrible name. In 1968, Eugene McCarthy, a no one from some state, a senator from some state, decided he wanted to challenge Lyndon Johnson, and had every student in the country on his side, but he wasn't a dynamic guy. I mean, he was okay. But anyway, Robert Kennedy, Senator of New York, kind of at the last moment said, I'm going to get into the race. And he was formidable. I mean, he carried his brother's name, etc. And his brother at that time was regarded as, a great hero. And I think he still was. I mean, he has foibles. I mean, I don't want to, but definitely had a lot of foibles, but he was a great president. And I came to believe that much later in life. At first, I really did not know how good he was. I thought he was somebody, rich boy, spoiled, got elected because his father bought off somebody in Cook County. I had no good feelings about him. But the more I learned about the man, the more I appreciated. He stood up to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Curtis LeMay accused him of being another Chamberlain at Munich, giving away the shop when he refused to face up to the Russians. Well, he told Curtis LeMay was, I don't know whether you know of him, but he was one of the most bombastic, forceful, mean, I would say ugly men, not, in demeanor, not in demeanor, not in actual looks. He liked to kill. He McNamara served under him. I mean, you could go watch. I encourage everyone to watch Fog of War, which will tell you the story of Curtis LeMay and who Kennedy was dealing with at that time, because Curtis LeMay despised Kennedy, just despised him. Now, there have been books after books written about Kennedy and his assassination. I'll just tell you one thing. One of the commentators today is a fellow named Ray McGovern, and he has a bookshelf in front of him. I have tons of books piled in back of me, but he's a little neater than I am, and I can see some of the books that he actually has. And he and I share one book. We both have it, and it's called Who Killed John Kennedy? Now, the CIA is the culprit in this book, and given Ray McGovern was a chief operative for the CIA, it's kind of unusual to find that he has that book in his background. But what I'm saying is that there's a lot of credibility to the U.S. government having done in both Kennedys. Yeah. And they did it basically for the sake of power and money. Military-industrial complex, that famous Eisenhower speech. I know I'm talking like American history, but I think that speech is very famous. When he left office, he warned everybody about the military-industrial complex. Yeah. Be careful. And he said originally he was going to call it the military-industrial congressional complex, because Congress was always on the dole. They whatever lobbying they had, went into, Congress was a willing participant in a lot of the stuff that went on. And what happened, Andy, is Vietnam served to be a turning point, because we could not maintain enough. Our balance of trade went berserk when we had guns and butter. We were supporting this massive war, major war in Vietnam. Also, there was Johnson's Great Society program. No way could we back the dollar up by gold. Nixon took us off temporarily, and, hopefully the temporary part will be 60 years, because we'll be back on to some form of gold standard if we're lucky. But we had no chance after that. Everything about America has really turned sour when we lost that gold backing. We again were able to spend money like drunken sailors, and whether it be education, whether it be healthcare, whether it be, you name it, we have gone down. And basically what has happened now is the BRICS have picked up the ball to some extent. I mean, look, I wouldn't want to live in China. I don't have any great fondness for China. Actually, I have a little bit more fondness for Russia. I know you probably find that maybe offensive. I hope you don't.
Yeah.
But I think that Putin is not Stalin. He's not Khrushchev. He's someone that came along in 2020 and took Russia out of an extraordinary economic slump. I think life expectancy in Russia, you know how they were paying their bills, some of the people, with vodka. Handyman came, they'd give them a pint of vodka to fix something in their house. They were just on the ropes until Putin came in. He was probably groomed, incidentally, for the job, but I'm not going to talk rumors. But, I do know this is a fact. Russian life expectancy again fell by 3-4 years. Now Russia, all of a sudden, is they're a very, very important country. They're the resource-wise, which is what we need in this world, are resources. They're probably the most important country in the world. They don't necessarily have the most oil, but they're pretty close with Saudi Arabia. But you talk about uranium, you talk about rare earths, you'll be hard-pressed to find any critical metal that Russia does not have and have in abundance. Now, what we've created, the United States basically has created that's why we're always after Russia, in my opinion, especially Putin. There was no reason for this. I mean, Jeffrey Sachs, you can listen to him, and he'll tell you he was there when all of this was happening. We had no desire to help Russia. And our goal all along has been to get our hands on those resources. U.S. has been profligate. We used all of ours up. I mean, we're down to fracking for oil, and basically that's almost finished. I mean, we're in trouble today in this country, and basically the world needs a new monetary system. The dollar no longer works. You cannot put the world's monetary system in the hands of a country that's willing to spend $100 billion in a Ukrainian war. My goodness, Andy, we're supporting Western Ukraine, not Eastern Ukraine. There's two different types of Ukraine. Western Ukraine is a Ukraine that worships, literally, 20-foot statue of Stepan Bandera. Is that who we want to be worshiping? He was a Nazi. He basically wanted to join the Nazi party. He admitted, or the first president of Ukraine admitted, they were part of the Holocaust. They were complicit in the Holocaust. Do we want to join forces? Did we, the United States, the great idea to join forces with this country? I thought we fought the Nazis once in World War II. Now all of a sudden, there are friends against Russia. I mean, something's gone crazy with the U.S.
Yeah.
Not the Brits so much. I mean, they're you're allies. I mean, and I don't know how you put up with us, to be honest, because you're basically the good guys. I mean, really. But what we've done here is crazy. I mean, let me just leave it there. I'm talking too much already.
No, not at all. I think you've mentioned what's interesting. You've covered so much good stuff here. And I think just pulling on a couple of the threads, you've mentioned China, you've mentioned Russia. And interestingly, and again, where the most of the global commodities exist in Russia, and China being a massive producer, and you've got this relationship. But what's interesting is that, and I'm going to ask you about this, but what's interesting is that on the 1st of January of 2024, Russia chairs the BRICS. The BRICS alliance.
Right. I think it's later. I think it's in October, but maybe they changed it.
Okay, but they moved to sit in that on that seat of and yes. So it may not be in the first. But
right. Yes, they will occupy the seat. Right, and they will chair the next BRICS meeting in late 1924.
Absolutely, but they occupy the seat. So what that does now, interestingly, what that does is because is obviously what people, I think, what I find when I speak to people, they get it so wrong. They think that China and Russia want to be a global power. What they actually want to do is create, in my view, what they want to do is create an equilibrium where everyone wins, where you take down the barriers. And if you won, how can one succeed without them all succeeding? And I think, to me, this is what's not understood.
Andy, I can't tell you how much I agree with you. I mean, I'm scared to say this kind of stuff, but yes, that's exactly what they want. They don't want, I'll tell you what China doesn't want. Is they want to avoid being the reserve currency, even if their currency is sort of technically backed by gold. They've been doing actually trades in yuan. India and Russia have been doing trades in yuan, and the yuan is backed by gold. If you're for trade purposes, I mean, unless they change the rules, let me qualify that, but I don't think they have. If you're trading in the International Shanghai Exchange, and you have yuan, you can go to that exchange, the gold part of it, and put your yuan in and buy gold, and then take it out of the country. That's the only place in China where you can export it. So technically, that's already backed by gold. But what you said about equilibrium, yes, that's exactly what China is interested in. They don't want to rule the world. They don't want that responsibility. I mean, they had a horrifying situation in Xinjiang. If I ever had to go to China, I would starve to death because I would have no chance of learning even one Mandarin word. I think I know ni hao. But anyway, in Xinjiang, they had a terrible problem with the Uyghur population because that was enough for them to handle, because all of a sudden they had these very aggressive terrorist Uyghurs coming in by the thousands or however many that really had it on their mind to seize China, not just that province. And China definitely overreacted. There's no doubt. They had these centers, etc. I mean, they didn't kill people or do anything. I'm sure things went bad in certain ways, but now that thanks to our losing Afghanistan, they've been able to close the border that allowed those radical Uyghurs, those terrorists, to come into the country, and everything is shutting down that was. And they're back to, respecting people, even Muslims. I mean, everybody in the West will say China is anti-Muslim. Well, if they're anti-Muslim, why are there two mosques? Why is per capita they have twice as many mosques as the U.S. has? I mean, that's not anti-Muslim. It's anti-terrorism and overreacting to anti-terrorism. And you could say America overreacted too. I mean, it's, you're protecting your entire country. And China, basically, my point is, China tolerates probably 50 different ethnic groups. And I did a little research one day, and I looked at this when people were talking about Xinjiang and the Uyghurs, etc. And I looked, how does China treat its minorities? I was curious about that. There's a ton of them. I mean, they're not very populous, But 201, Andy, I was shocked by this. 201, they are all overrepresented in the political parts of the country they can be part of. In other words, if you're not in the Communist Party, and some of them are in the Communist Party, but if you're not in the Communist Party, there are certain political positions you can hold, and they're overrepresented. Every single one of those different ethnicities are overrepresented, including the Muslims, actually. They have two types of Muslims in the country. China, they have a history. Cardinal Richelieu, I think, was his name. He went around in, I think, the 15th or 16th century proselytizing for Christianity throughout China. When's the last time China was in a war? Korea? And I don't think that's a war they wanted to be in. Before that, the wars were always against China. The Opium Wars were the Japanese, the rape of the city that, they were always the victim. If you pick up books, even fiction books about China and their behavior and what happened to China in, I guess, the early 20th century, late 19th century, it's all about the humiliation of China. China did rule the world for a while. They never ruled the world, but they always, there's a very famous anecdote about China, which is stuck in my mind. And it goes along exactly with what you were saying. China had their king or leader, 500-600 years ago, 700 years ago, wanted to find out, how powerful his navy was. And they have these massive ships, etc. And he told his key admiral to sail around, I guess, the Horn of Africa. And the admiral came back and he would say, in a reverent tone to, the Tsar, whatever I can't remember what they weren't kings, but whatever, the Tsar of China. You won't believe this. A single boat of ours is bigger than their entire fleet. We can just go and take whatever we want. You know what the emperor ordered him to do? I think emperor is the word. He ordered him to destroy the fleet. He said, we don't need the fleet. Well, no one's going to attack us. Now, I don't know whether that story is true or not. I've heard it. A lot of people swear by it, but it's true to the extent that it illustrates how China thinks about its civilization, 5,000 years of civilization. They don't think about winning wars. The art of war is about basically how do you avoid war. That's the chief thing. It's the anecdote to Machiavelli. If you want to know about war, you read Machiavelli. If you want to know how to avoid a war, you read The Art of War. And this is China. They're not interested. The last thing they want is their yuan to serve as the reserve currency, even though it's backed by gold. They want a basket. They've said that. The former head of the PBOC said the worst thing that had the Triflin dilemma. He used that in a white paper that he wrote in 2009. He doesn't want the yuan to be the single reserve currency. He wants a basket of currencies and gold in a separate piece, which I had translated from China to English. Gold is referred to as a sacred metal and part of the Chinese dream, not because it has material value, but because it has sacred value. And just one more comment. I know I'm going on too far. They don't even know where gold came from. When they say it's sacred, it very well may be. What they know, it cannot be synthesized in the sun. It either had to come from a supernova or two neutron stars colliding together. The supernova theory, last I heard, had gone out the window. So gold is this mysterious substance with all these, I would call them magical properties. To find them all together in one metal that you can, make it so thin as a light wave, literally impossible to destroy, beautiful. You'll see Simone Weil, the great French theologian, writing about gold as a symbol of beauty. And she makes this offhand comment, then I'll shut up, about gold. observing, because she didn't care about money and monetary things. She just cared about, religion. And she, just made an offhand comment. She said, no, it's interesting. When gold left the French monetary system, all of a sudden, everybody started accumulating francs for power. They wanted power through the monetary system. I mean, gold prevents that from happening because it does have this kind of sacred resonance, and it's sort of there, and it does serve like a very, very special purpose. I mean, the Muslims actually believe it was created by God. I mean, that's exactly what the Quran will say. And they will also say exactly this, that it's transcendent, spiritually transcendent, as well as material. It serves both purposes. And so this gold is coming to the world. I can't tell you on what day or date, but the way the world is going now, it's going that way.
Well, Stephen, you're bang on because, and really, I mean, we talk about several things that come to mind here, where gold came from. Well, yes, when one has a bar of gold, a coin, whatever it might be, a piece of gold, whatever it might be, it is already, and you have it in your possession, that has all the energy that ever went into it is there. It owes nothing. It owes nobody anything because all the energy went into it. Now, people look at the gold price and say, look, the gold price is going up. No. The gold price is not moving. It's just taking more worthless dollars, pounds, euros being printed in ever bigger supply to buy that same ounce of gold. Now, what is interesting here, Stephen, which is really pertinent, is that obviously we're two things really. We talked about the BRICS. We sort of talk about Glasnev's 20 commodity currency, which I do know a fair bit about, and I know that's coming in, and it's a gold-backed currency, and it'll be an amalgamation of currencies that are backed by gold. But really, what is so interesting here is, look what happened. Goldman came out last week and said, oh my God, they asked the question, who's going to buy the 1.78 trillion of US Treasury debt in 2024? Who's going to buy it? And then and 1.1 trillion has been issued in the last 3 months. Now, so what we're seeing, though, for the first time, Stephen, in all the something 50 years I've been involved in gold business, no mainstream media has ever talked about gold before. On Bloomberg, we suddenly see these analysts who are looking very wrong, very, very wrong. Their reputation at risk here have turned out, and several came out last week and said, actually, we're looking for real assets, and real assets are gold. And now what we're seeing is the issuance of treasuries, which have high counterparty risk, meeting the world of gold, which is physical gold, which is NSFR compliant since the 1st of January 2023, when the BIS actually made gold a first-tier asset class. They are suddenly, gold is now actually competing with treasuries and competing. Now, the Fed does not, this is their all hallowed treasuries. But I think what the point I'm trying to make is gold, the fact is that gold now competes with treasuries. It's undermining the 1913 Federal Reserve Act. What a mind-blowing thought.
It basically is. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Now, Andy, I'm taking a chapter from your book. I mean, this is despite the fact that they're doing everything they can to control this mess. I mean, that they've gotten them. It's a mess from the perspective of the U.S. dollar and U.S. assets, and they may keep it under control for a while longer. I can't say how much they'll risk, but I think that they have shown. I mean, in Ukraine, I mean, it's a travesty what they've done. I mean, I've heard, actually, I think the British and another Western country have casualty figures for the Ukraine that are something like 500,000 soldiers. These are young kids that died so that we might get a chance to break Russia up into a whole lot of component parts for their resources. I mean, another thing that you find in the Bible, which I'm not a religious guy. I believe in a higher power. I'm not sure what that higher power is. I believe I'm a primitive guy. I don't know. I don't think anybody does, but I know I don't. Maybe other people do. I can only speak for myself. That there's so much I don't know that I cannot explain. And the more I read and study physics, chemistry, and, as much as I can, I realize they don't know. I mean, there are just questions that are beyond anyone's intuition. And you realize that there's something else out there and we don't get it. I mean, we're reacting. We're deifying ourselves in the West, in the US. I mean, we're saying that we understand and we know all the answers. And no, I mean, all we've succeeded in doing in the West is convincing people that whomever is involved, that I don't know who's running the West. I know it's not Biden. I mean, he might be part of it, but he's a pretty small part of it. I know he's always hated Russia for reasons he's never been able to state, even when he was a senator. But still, the rules are anything goes. Anything that the West does is good. And anything that the East or China or anyone else does is bad. And that is basically their major rule. The West and the East has all the resources. We should have those resources. So let's start a war. We'll use Ukraine as a battering ram because, in our army now, I mean, I think it was Michael Savage. He's a humorist. He was talking to Colonel McGregor, he's good. He knows what he's talking about. And I don't think McGregor found it too funny about, he was asked, McGregor, do you think that the U.S. will have send soldiers to Ukraine? And McGregor said, no, they won't. It would be, just not happen. But he said to Colonel McGregor, what you don't realize is our soldiers today are not what they were. They're all dressed up. Some of them are wearing high heels. In fact, they'll go in there. And McGregor did not think that was very funny, but I did. Yes. And it's true. It's true. We have these aircraft carriers with which either of China or Russia could take down if they wanted to. They don't want to. They want peace. China has passed us in so many things. I don't even want to talk about everything. Look at Huawei introducing a smartphone that's fully competitive with Apple, despite all the sanctions. Despite all the sanctions, your Nature magazine, I say the British Nature magazine, which is certainly pro-Western and woke, whatever, but they're still a very, very good magazine. Every year they do a survey, and they survey countries, what's the most important country scientifically across the sciences. For the first time, it was China in 2023, their survey. The reason is because there was much less cooperation between Chinese and American scientists. The Chinese are very willing to cooperate with anybody. I mean, you see names of 10 Chinese people on a paper, but maybe last year there would have been 7 Chinese and 5 Americans, or 7 and 7. No, America, but this is all America's doing. I mean, it just is so bizarre. We need such a wake-up call. America, I still believe America can become a great country again. It was a great country when when the Kennedys were around, but after 1970, I mean, our life expectancy now, it's where it was in the 1990s. what going off the gold standard and everything involved with money. And again, I think I started out this long rant, and I'm sorry about my long rants, but another biblical saying, which rings so true. Love of money is the root of all evil. Once money becomes the center of your life, finished. Everybody else around you is nothing more than a cog. Now, it's okay to really want to be rich, but as long as you don't forget there are other things that are more important. There are sacred things that are hidden, that are inside you, that you really can't express, that are unique to you. But if it's money, and that's what's sacred, forget about it. Then your whole life is based on materialism. And to use that and try and deify yourself, which is what the Americans have done. And there's a lot of Jewish Americans, giving money to Ukraine who supported Bandera. I mean, it's sometimes it's very depressing. All I can say for me personally, and I'm speaking personally, I just find it so depressing. It's like I sometimes don't believe I'm living in this country. I mean, I grew up and it was a great, great country where we could really trust our government to really care about us. And yes, there were certain people that made a lot of money and other people that were just workmen. But you know what? There was commonality. They could share things. They could talk to one another. Today, I mean, it's just so different.
So, Stephen, obviously we're also, this kind of refers almost to US dollar hegemony, which is, as you say, China doesn't want to take that reign. But US dollar hegemony has been driving so much of the violence, the wars, etc., etc. And I think really what I'm going to ask you really is, look, given that we also have now the global South controlling, let's just take the energy complex, hundreds of thousands of billions a year of energy, of oil, gas, energy, just that one market alone, and about 80% of it is produced, if not 85% of it, produced in the global South, who controls this. Now we see them talking about, hang on, the US dollar has been weaponized. This game of US dollar hegemony, the power of it is, and especially after Afghanistan debacle, one thing and another, a lot of respect's been lost. Now is the time to move. So what we're seeing here is the formalizing of a currency, gold-backed, and we're very fortunate to have had almost inside information from Glasniev, where he actually outlined in detail the two options of actually really creating this basket of currencies. And one won't work yet because basically the imbalance between the various trading currencies is just too much of an imbalance for it to work. However, by commoditizing 20 major commodities, and that includes oil, gas, grain, all of these things are produced in the global South and consumed largely in the global South. If that is now based on a price that is exchangeable for these commodities can be exchanged for gold essentially,
Right.
Which we see going on now. And I know people trading this, Stephen. I know people who will go and get a 30% discount right now from Russia for oil, and then and literally by literally exchanging a bar of gold for it.
That is so interesting.
So obviously this is coming. So with this battle now between waning US dollar hegemony, it's been weaponized. People want to ditch it. When you're in the global South, they want to ditch it. On this side of the pond, they just want to keep printing it. So something's breaking here. And what do you think? How is this going to play out? What, in your view, you've got such a global view of things. How do you think this will play out as we move into, say, 2024, and as that starts to really take root?
Okay, I think China's biggest problem right now is the United States. I mean, most countries one can deal with, but the United States has a fantastic, and I use that word knowing what it means, a fantasy-like amount of debt. I mean, it's an inconceivable amount of debt, and they've got to figure out a way of doing that. I mean, I don't think, and we're very, very fortunate that China is not become our bitter enemy, but they have not at all. They still want to cooperate. You didn't see one word coming. I think I saw maybe 6 weeks after that piece came out in Nature. I think it was a third story on South China Post. But no arm thumping. I mean, years ago, whenever China produced the fastest computer, they would tell everybody about, because they thought everybody'd be happy about it. Hey, we're adding to technology. We're contributing. No, you're threatening us. I mean, this is going to be a very delicate work. I think right now they have basically the wind to their back, the Chinese do, in a couple of ways, because what Ukraine and Russia and China and the U.S., what the sanctions have shown is they backfire. They don't work. Russia right now is growing actually faster than the U.S. So you're going to get high U.S. figures. We don't have a manufacturing base in this country. We ran out of weapons to sell Ukraine. I mean, the entire West did. NATO plus the United States could not produce nearly as many weapons as Russia. Now, someone will say, oh, they got weapons from North Korea. Well, how many can I mean, I don't know whether they did or didn't. And, frankly, how many weapons can North Korea produce? And I don't think they got very much from China either, because it would be known. I mean, we're not that bad off. I mean, we've got some intelligence. So for goodness sakes, they have proved that these sanctions, the only sanctions that work is the West stole a lot of yachts. And they also blew up an infrastructure project, a $5 billion infrastructure project that supplied Germany with cheap gas, so Germany could be a manufacturing hub. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it was the West. I wasn't there to look at it. I don't know, but I know it wasn't 5 guys in a sailboat and one guy going, which was the story. I mean, the things you would read in the New York Times would make you laugh. I mean, this is what mainstream media was telling us, like 5 guys in a sailboat. I mean, eventually, Seymour Hersh has written several articles, etc. Yeah. Everything is backfired. Now, not only have our, monetary sanctions not stopped Russia at all, but have strengthened the relationship between Russia and China, but our technology sanctions, shutting down Huawei. We threw every possible sanction we possibly could at Huawei. Huawei was a jewel in China's technology crown, and it stopped Huawei for about 2 years. This year, in addition to China being anointed as the number one, they also came out with a paper. I pay attention to Google Scholar, and the paper is on a memristor. It's basically overcomes a fundamental bottleneck that has existed in computers since computers were designed. So, I mean, regardless of what they do, China's going to be there in the forefront of AI. Speaking of AI, recently I read an article in Asia Times where the U.S. has given up on fusion, and they've sent a lot of their fusion research to Britain, which I was happy to hear about, because I still think I have more confidence in Britain than I do in the U.S. And I think Britain, if they work with China, fusion will become a real possibility. Andy, that's what we want. Mm-hmm. We want the basis we want everybody to be a world citizen. Maintain your sovereignty, maintain what's sacred to you, because that's critical. Jefferson, I just have to leave with one thing, because I'm probably I don't know how much time I have left, but what got me thinking a lot about what I'm saying today was reading none other than, I hate to say this, okay, I'm not in any way trying to say anything anti-British, because Jefferson didn't have anything to say against Britain. I mean, Britain became our friend as soon as we broke away from them. I mean, you guys have been our allies for, 260 years. I bet the last 50 you probably regret, because we kind of dragged you guys along. But, Jefferson, right in the Declaration of Independence, didn't want to ever be better than Britain. He just wanted to be on the same par. And that's right there in black and white. But what's also in black and white is a phrase that got me so interested in Jefferson. He said, our creator, our God has created us all equal, comma, given us rights, inalienable rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So equality and these inalienable rights were really separate. And now if you think about it from a material sense, you look like a very trim guy. If you fought me, you'd kill me, probably. I mean, knock me out in I don't know, 10 minutes. I'm not so trim. We're not equal. You're probably faster than I am. You know the weeds of the gold market so much better than I ever will know. And we're not equal. I mean, but we are equal in one very important sense, in what we believe is sacred. Even though we both may believe there's a higher power, it's hard. It's how we believe and how we interpret. And that's how Jefferson saw things. And just one last comment, because I got the biography of Jefferson, and his biography was the most important freedom for Jefferson was not freedom of speech, was not freedom of religion, was not freedom of the press, was rather freedom of the mind, freedom of ideas. And that's how the world progresses. Without freedom of ideas, there's no growth in the world. I mean, I'm being too strong, but he wasn't necessarily for religion, incidentally. He was also quoted as saying, I don't care whether you believe in 10 gods or one God with 10 heads. I mean, it's all, it's sacred to you, whatever you want to believe. But, you've got to have something sacred. And you've got to have, because that provides you to have freedom of mind. If all you believe in is money, where's the freedom of mind? Okay, I've got an iPhone here. That's, you can't look at my desk or what I have parked in a garage and say, that's me. No, it's nothing to do with it. I mean, me is what's inside.
Freedom of mind. Stephen, that distills it right down, because that is exactly what that dissolves all the other issues. Because right now, what I hear when I meet people, and these are some are smart people, what they hear, what they repeat to you is sound bites from a headline. They do not delve into. This is why it's so important to have you here today. Delving into China, delving into Russia, delving into the deeper story. This is not Russia bad, China bad. This is not this is about freedom of mind. And when you have that, and you have that spirituality, which you're talking about.
The spirituality, yes.
Then you are going to come up with a sharing of, a collective sharing of wisdom that can only grow amongst each other.
Yes. I mean, Andy, I was sitting in a doctor's office, Upper Manhattan, and I'm sure this guy, probably Jewish, and intelligent. I mean, it just struck me as someone well-dressed, etc. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but we talked about Ukraine. He said, well, you certainly agree Putin's a psychopath. I mean, we have no fight about that. I said, well, actually, have you ever read anything Putin's written? No. And I said, why don't you read something Putin's written? No, I won't. I don't want to even read it. I mean, all you have to do is go to Kremlin.org, read his speech, if you get a chance, on the day he annexed those 3 Russian areas. And you will read a speech that maybe Kennedy in this country could have made it, Jefferson could have made it, and Lincoln could have made it. Other than that, no one would have made a speech like that. He actually quotes Sermon on the Mount, the speech in which Jesus, comes along. And it also influenced, well, there's so much we could talk about, but that has been such an influential speech, about the morality. And some of it I didn't know. I had to ask my son, what do you mean by the bad fruit on the tree or something like that? And he knew it, but Putin was quoting this in a speech, and it wasn't to show off. He wasn't speaking to the West. He was speaking to Russia. And Russia is now a motley place, a collection of Muslims, Jews, they're Christian Orthodox. That's their religion, and Putin goes to church. They have a Holocaust museum, which Putin gives to himself. I mean, I'm sure he doesn't give a lot of money to it, but he actually gives money to it. He actually bought a home as a child. I'm not trying to praise him. He does a lot of horrible things, but I am in a way saying that he's not a horrible man. I mean, he's out for Russia. Everything is for Russia. But also there's a certain morality about him. This woman who helped raise him when he was very young, because both his parents worked, she was Jewish, and she emigrated to Israel. He bought her an apartment out of his own pocket, a really nice apartment. I mean, he can afford a nice apartment. He probably steals a lot of money. I mean, he's not perfect. No one is. But I mean, people don't even bother reading what the man has to say. They have no knowledge. They just assume they're dealing with Stalin again. There's no mention of Stalin. Not even Stalingrad is Stalingrad anymore, for goodness sakes. They took the name Stalin out of everything. And even Leningrad is no longer Leningrad. It's St. Petersburg. I mean, this is what Putin is governing. He's governing a lot of Muslims, a lot of Jews, a lot of Christians, a lot of minorities, and he's doing a hell of a job doing it. He's got, approval ratings, and yes, you can question them, and I know that, but I just think that every sign is he's extremely popular.
And Stephen, I agree. What this is, what it's saying is, delve into it, look into it yourself, look for the information. And this is all about education. It is about us gathering information and making ourselves and taking responsibility for each of ourselves and saying, let me find out about this before I follow the mantra, before I just mindlessly just follow the mantra. I should find out for myself, because I will make better decisions for myself, my family. And of course, ultimately, and this is kind of where I'm heading with this, ultimately, right now, the only thing I think with all the chaos around the world, and yes, we really pray that what you're talking about is the freedom of mind is coming. I think the pendulum does swing back that way. I really do. I have faith that it will.
So do I.
But I think ultimately, and I guess this is just the final thing I was heading into, which is in order for us to take responsibility for ourselves, then I think what we need to do is we need to, and obviously this is important, is to make sure that we have enough physical gold, enough physical silver to give us the freedom. It's not about money. This is about the freedom to be able to insulate ourselves from these bad people who really control us through money.
Yes, Andy, you say it so well. I mean, I'm just fortunate in one way, is that I never believe, I'm always willing to say I'm wrong. And most of the time I'm right when I say I'm wrong. I mean, and I learned so much from these conversations with you. I mean, you express things better than I do. And you're absolutely right. I mean, and the way you say it is much more terse than I would ever say it. And I really appreciate that. I mean, people have to be willing to accept that. In this country, we're ruled by a bunch of people that are deifying themselves. They don't believe they can be wrong. I mean, they talk about democracy like they know what democracy is. I'll just tell you one last thing. If you have a chance, there's a show called Bergen. I think that's called. It's about a Danish female prime minister. She becomes prime minister. Just watch the 6th episode. They have a terrorist that has come to their country, and they're interviewing him, and they ask him to define democracy. And he just says it's something you understand. I'll sort of give it away a little bit. It's something you understand but cannot explain. It's like explaining love. You really can't. But what it does, it allows you to appreciate all other kinds of people without making judgments and that sort of thing. I mean, that's sort of the gist of it. But don't come back and say, well, you were wrong on this or that. I mean, I'm speaking, but I've played it over a couple of times, and it was on a TV show. I mean, I guess my point is, following up on what you're saying, but much more, too many words. You say it very succinctly, is you can learn from almost anything and anybody. It doesn't matter.
Well, we've certainly, Stephen, we've certainly learned from you today. And this is so important because sometimes we get wrapped up in a bit of a tunnel vision, we're in our gold world. And yes, it's all great and all the rest of it, but it's so important. And you bring so much to the table here. And I think what it's done is people are going to look to you for more information. But obviously we've only got this we've just used up an hour, and that's all we had today. But you've written books. You have so much information. I know you do put information out there on a regular basis. So how do people follow you, and how do they find you, Stephen?
Well, StephenLeeb.com, StephenLeeb.com, no charge.
Well, that's straightforward.
You can put X out. Maybe we want your email address, but you don't have to even give us that. I want people to know. So StephenLeeb.com. At my age, I never was that interested in money. I'm even less interested in it now. But I mean, I'm interested in eating. You understand the essentials. But Andy, I just want to, it's the last point. I just want to thank you because, I mean, you're the guy that's been in the weeds. You're the guy that's risked his life, because you thought gold was important. I can't match you in that. I mean, I'm just a nerd who will spend hours and hours studying it. But you actually had physical courage. What you did, I mean, that was, so and you express things so well. And it's not it was ingrained in you. I mean, to take chances. I mean, you risked a lot doing what you did. I mean, outing all these manipulators. I mean, this was all you. No one ever dreamt. I never dreamt until I heard about what you had done. I learned from you without even knowing you. Before I even knew who you were. I mean, I was honored to be, talking to you, how important you had been to the whole market system. It wasn't just gold, that could be a rigged system. This is not, people trust the markets. The markets know. The markets don't know anything, especially if things get rough and, you're threatened. They're going to try everything they can and every trick in the book. And, everybody owes you a lot. Let me put it that way.
Well, Stephen, I think I'll go back to what you said. We're all equal here, and we bring this all to the table, and people will take what they want, and there it is, and it enables us to make better decisions. I really, truly thank you so much for joining us today, Stephen.
I thank you, Andy. I really do.
Please, let's do this again. And I know there's so many other things I wanted to talk to you about. We need another episode. I'm going to get Patrick to tee it up.
And Andy, if you ever want to talk just on the phone, on not on TV, and something you want to pass on,
Yeah.
because you honestly are much more succinct than I, and I'll tell you my thinking. We're gonna have a 2-hour conversation on the phone, and you could say it's your own. I don't care. I just want the truth out there. I want it to be a better world for everybody, and I think it can be.
I haven't written books like you, Stephen. I haven't written books, and I don't have. No, you are truly a gem, and thank you so much for joining us.
Well, you are too, Andy. I mean, it's a mutual admiration society. Truly, I think. I mean, anyway, the world owes you a lot. Okay, I mean that's. I'll stop there.
No, I wish we didn't have to, but just for time's sake, people don't like looking at stuff over an hour. So that is the world we're in. But yeah, thank you so much, Stephen. Bless you.
Thank you so much, Andy. Have a wonderful evening. See you soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrew Maguire and Dr. Stephen Leeb, for another fascinating discussion. And remember, buy physical and make sure it's 1-to-1. It's got to be backed 1-to-1, and understand the difference between what Andy affectionately calls the casino paper gold and silver markets and the actual physical gold and silver markets. They're not the same, and don't be fooled. So there you have it. That's all we have for you today on another episode of Live from the Vault. Now let me do that again. Now, please help us spread the word about this channel by hitting that like button, because it really helps out the show. Share this information, and make sure, if you haven't already done so, subscribe. And if you click on that bell right there, you'll be notified as each episode goes live. And with that, we'll see you next time right here on Live from the Vault. See you then.